Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. This is your host, Bob Gibbons.
And I'm Stephen Nooner.
We have an interesting show for you today and a great guest. We're looking forward to talking to him in a little bit. And before we do that, though, we'd like to make sure that you understand why we're here and what this show is all about. We're here to support the entrepreneurial community, and our goal is for every show to be fun, meaningful, and where we really learn about how people have grown businesses and what they've done to overcome adversity and to grow and prosper. So we're looking forward to that today.
And why don't I introduce our guest?
That'd be a good idea.
All right. Well, let's get going. I'd like to introduce our special guest, our next leveler for today. That's what you're called once you're on the show. Dave Leidy is the owner of Spectrum VoIP, a cloud-based phone services company based out of Irving, Texas, and with locations in Houston and Austin. The company has been in business for 10 years and employs 40 people. To learn more about Dave and Spectrum, visit spectrumvoip.com. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Well, glad you're here. We're excited for you to share your wisdom with us today, but we always like to start off with wisdom from other people first. And sometimes we bring the quote, but today you brought a really interesting quote, so we're going to read your quote and then chat about that for a second. And your quote was from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
God bless you.
I think.
Very good, very good.
We'll see. And she said, the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. So why did you choose that quote?
Oh, I think it fits our times. I think, there's a lot of political division. We see more, stalemates in politics than ever before. In social media especially, people tend to really apply stereotypes in one way or another to the extent that, they trick our minds sometimes. They're a trap. Mm-hmm. In many ways, and I think the quote, as it's paraphrased, is more effective, which is the problem with stereotypes is that they're true. If you think about that deeply, it can bring some enlightenment.
That's why some people get upset with stereotypes, because they are true.
Sure, but it's also why they're dangerous to apply them to a broad spectrum.
Yeah, because you can't generalize with everything.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's an effective quote to keep in mind in a world of controversy and in social media, especially, where you see, very extreme opinions all the time.
Right.
It's just effective to keep that in mind this day and age.
Well, very good. Well, one of the things that's always interesting is we like to start off with something about our guests that maybe some people don't know. And with you, I understand there's a particular reason why you sometimes complain about being a little heavier than you'd like to be.
Yeah, it's funny.
Bluebell, maybe?
I came, well, not them, but I came to realization a couple years ago that I'm an addict of sugar and ice cream. And I literally can't go a single night without eating ice cream.
So what's your brand? What's your brand and flavor?
It doesn't matter.
All of them.
Yeah, anything with chocolate and peanut butter.
See, I used to work at Haagen-Dazs in San Francisco, and they let us eat all we wanted anytime. Even if we weren't working, I could come in on Saturday night and buy.
I blame my mother because she restricted me as a kid, and then when I broke out, when I moved away, I went off the deep end, and I gained 40 pounds, and
it always goes back.
I don't really blame my mother.
So all your kids got all the ice cream they wanted growing up.
Yeah, and they don't have an ice cream addiction.
Good.
Funny story about that. I have a mentor, older gentleman. The first time I met him, I think he's ran like 20-something marathons, and I'm like, man, I was like, you must really love running. And he's like, no, I love ice cream.
It's funny. His name's not Pat, is it?
No, it's Alan.
Because I know
The
a
Alan
guy matches
Luber.
that description as well.
Well, I'd like to just kind of get into talking a little bit about your business. So, for our audience, just what is a cloud-based phone system or VoIP or what? Some of these terms tend to confuse people when we start there.
Okay, so you hear the term a lot, in the cloud, and that simply means that services that you used to have to used to be provided through on-premise equipment, such as servers, phone systems for small business, have migrated to third-party service providers where you subscribe to these services. Okay, my company, we used to maintain our own Exchange server for email, and the greatest day in the history of Spectrum is when we finally got rid of that thing.
And now it's hosted by somebody else
And
on
now
their
it's hosted
server
in the cloud and
through
we
the internet.
Sure, and we pay
Okay.
a subscription monthly fee, and I don't ever think about upgrades, software, security, backups, scalability, all of those things. And so we do that with phone systems. So it lowers costs, but at the same time, it drives innovation. It makes it easier to innovate. And it literally provides features at a lower cost than a feature set that you can't afford to buy on an individual basis for your business.
Speaking of innovation, so I was an early adopter of VoIP. I thought it was really great. And when we first started using it, though, it would go,
Right.
and it would cut out. And now literally we run, 20 phones, people on the phones constantly
Right.
with just crystal clear. So tell me about the journey, what's happening there. And
Sure, and obviously there's two reasons for that. We call that QoS in the industry, quality of service.
Okay.
And it's a term, and VoIP had a very bad reputation in the early days of voice over IP. People associated it with Vonage. Vonage would advertise on TV. Back when you paid a long distance bill, which nobody does anymore, and $20 a month for all you can eat sounded really good.
Yeah.
So people would get a Vonage device, plug it into their slow DSL connection, and talk to grandma across country a lot. And the problem is people extrapolated that experience onto a business class VoIP solution, which is what we provide. And so we had to overcome that in the sales channel and overcome that reputation, I should say, that voice over IP had. But in terms of your case, Stephen, bandwidth is becoming. We take it for granted, and it's becoming to the point where you don't have to worry about it anymore, so to speak. Whereas in the old days, and when I started Spectrum VoIP, you had to be very, very careful about the bandwidth that you used and how you delivered it and how you managed it in order to ensure a quality VoIP
So the
experience.
speed of my internet really
Sure.
determines the quality of my voice.
That's
internet.
correct. And if you have plenty of
VoIP.
speed, you never have to worry about prioritizing bandwidth. But what happened in the industry, and it's really been a blessing over the last 5 years, is the preponderance of services such as Netflix. We all want to get our video delivered on demand now, and the internet is the pipeline for that.
Sure.
And so the internet had to be built, to handle that data. And video is a tremendous amount of traffic compared to a phone call, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about multiple megabits versus a small fraction of 1 megabit. 100K, if you're technical, is all it takes for a phone call. So back in the days of early DSL, when you only had a couple 100K and you're going to peel off 100K for your voice, if you then sent an email, right, then, you sounded like Bill Clinton on the other side.
So they're fighting it out.
Yeah, they're fighting it out. So, what made us different in the early days is we delivered a special router where we could do what's called traffic shaping, where we could let the router identify what's VoIP and what's not VoIP, and always ensure that the VoIP traffic goes first, leaving your internet connection. Okay, and on the inbound side, we always had to make sure that somebody who is watching a video, streaming a video or something, can't saturate that connection and use all of the available bandwidth.
Sure.
Because then you have the same result. And the third person you're talking to, their call breaks up and so forth. It's all about bandwidth constraint.
Well, let's talk also innovation, because what I've also seen being an early adopter is just incredible leaps and jumps of capability.
Absolutely. So innovation is happening every day. Many of the technologies that we use are open source. I mean, it's all the server technology, right? It's all based on what we call LAMP technology, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. These are open source technologies that are developed every day by thousands of brilliant people all over the world contributing to this project. It's no longer just a bunch of engineers at Microsoft, under the command of Bill Gates.
Right.
It's now some of the smartest people in the world working collectively. So the software has come incredibly far. And you can get for free these days what you couldn't get for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just 10 years ago.
Well, full disclosure, Steven's company and my company are both customers of Spectrum. So I don't know if you knew that, but we are.
I did know that.
So you did your homework. Good. So one of the things I thought was cool about it is that, in my company, I've only got 2 people. Steven's got like 20 or 21. Mm-hmm. I look just like he does. I can afford all the same features that he has because I subscribe to your hosted service. But if I were to want to move to another place or go on vacation, how do I take that with me, or can I?
Right. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And thank you for asking. It's totally mobile. You just unplug your phone and plug it in wherever you move to. You never have to worry about changing your phone number again. In the old days, we thought of phone numbers as area codes would define the region. So if you dial 212, I know I'm calling New York City, right? Sure. Now these days with cell phones, I often get calls from people that I know have lived in the Dallas area for a long time, but I see the cell phone coming from an area code I don't recognize. And that's becoming more and more common. We've decoupled phone numbers from regions. And so now with your business, your phone number never has to change, and you never have to pay someone like AT&T or an old Bell phone company to keep your phone number permanently call forwarded to your new location. You just pick up your phones and move.
So if I want to go on vacation for a month and I don't want my customers knowing about it, I can take my phone, plug it into the wall, and
sure,
some
rent
beach.
a house out in La Jolla. I did that a couple years ago. It was beautiful. Customers didn't know I wasn't in Dallas, Fort Worth in my office.
I love this.
And even my employees, we still have an intercom. Video calls, everything. If you can work at a desk, then you can work from anywhere with voice over IP.
And the intercom works just like that.
There's no difference. And it's kind of funny if you have 2 offices right next to each other, mm-hmm. and one person calls the other person, that call actually leaves through that internet connection, through the cloud, goes all the way to our infrastructure, okay, in the cloud in Dallas, Texas.
Right.
And we route the call all the way back to the office right next to you. So there's no difference there than calling somebody else.
And I love, and we're about to go to a break, but what I also love is the ability to see on the phone people that are working remotely, whether or not they're on the phone.
Right.
I mean, that's really, really powerful to have something light up.
Sure.
Oh, someone's on the phone. Don't call them yet. I'll call them back in a minute.
And we call that presence, and it's a term that's used for instant messaging and so forth. People even keep presence apps on their phones. Facebook has one integrated and so forth. But you want to be able to look at your phone and see if they're busy or not. If their light is green, their phone is idle. Go ahead and press that button, intercom them. If it's red, they're on another call. That's all that means. And so that can be very handy for multi-site businesses, people with off-site employees, and so forth.
Well, we're going to cut to the break, but before we do, sales cures all ills, right? But what happens to your company when your sales are growing, but you can't let go of control? Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them. So let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at texastenantrep.com. Again, that's texastenantrep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Hi, I'm Marc Luber with Tetra Media Group, and I just spent the best 26 minutes of my week talking with Stephen and Bob on the Next Level show. Take care.
Welcome back to the Next Level, Conversations that Propel Business. We're here with our special guest, Dave Leidy with Spectrum VoIP. You can learn more about his company at spectrumvoip.com. Now, one of the things I wanted to get back to on our conversation was, in fact, we hadn't touched on it yet, but when you started this company, you were 10 years ago, VoIP really wasn't very well known. And how were you an expert in that already?
Yeah, good. I fell into it. I didn't know anything about it. I came from a finance background. Okay, I have a degree in finance, and I went into the equipment leasing industry, which is kind of like mortgage brokers, except for commercial equipment. In fact, I used to lease a lot of radio equipment, like transmitters and towers and studio equipment and so forth. Wow. But what happened was we started leasing a lot of phone systems, okay? I had a company in town here in Dallas called Flex Lease, not associated with AutoFlex Leasing.
Right.
People make that because they advertise on the radio. They're well known. But we specialize in commercial equipment finance only. But we started leasing a lot of phone systems. And in so doing, eventually the tail started wagging the dog. We realized that if we actually sold the phone systems that we were leasing as well, became the dealer and the finance company, we could make money on both sides of the coin. So we broke into that more and more, started selling phone systems, hired some technicians and so forth. We would finance them and sell them. And then one day I thought I was going to go close an account, and instead I got a phone call that they decided to go with a competitor. And I had never heard of them. They were out of California. I said, well, who is it? And they named somebody I didn't know, and so I looked them up, and they were a hosted PBX provider. I didn't even know what that meant. What does that mean, hosted? And that was, again, very early days. The term cloud didn't even exist then.
Sure.
Right. So I decided, wow, that's a really great business model, because if I can put that infrastructure in place, now I can sell someone a phone system without selling them a phone system, because they don't have to buy anything, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy to sell nothing. Easiest thing I've ever done.
Well, plus it creates an ongoing cash flow stream that's forever.
Sure, you want that subscription. You want that monthly recurring revenue. And that really attracted me to that business model, is a subscription-based monthly recurring revenue business model. It's kind of a, it's a dream to have that. Once you build it, they're just hard to build.
Hard to build.
Yes. So we started out and we took our premise-based phone system that was based on software technology, and I hired some software engineers to reverse engineer it and figure out how we could take one big system, put it into the cloud, and then partition it for small businesses to run their phone service as a partition, if you will, on one big server.
Wow.
So instead of putting one server for one customer, I had one server for 100 customers, or 500.
So did you totally bootstrap it, or did you have to take on capital, or what did you do?
We bootstrapped it, When I say, it's kind of funny to think that maybe I'm the only guy in the world that ever started a phone company with no money and no industry experience, So I would joke about that. If I ever claim any expertise in anything, that would be my calling card. But
Goodness.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would do it again, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But, we made it work just by slow growth. And fortunately, I had people around me that were able to go to work without any guarantees. Commission salespeople are very valuable, especially quality ones.
Oh, yeah.
Especially quality ones.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, it's amazing that you were able to do that without really knowing what you were getting into, but that's probably a good thing in some ways. So one of the questions I had, though, was how readily has this been adopted? I mean, how big is the VoIP world
Well, everybody
now?
knows how big the telecommunications industry is. every small business pays more than they think they should for telecommunication services. But to this day, according to Gartner, the last thing I read about a year ago, and again, this may be slightly changed since then, was that there's been about a 30% adoption to voice over IP.
30%.
About 30%.
So that means 70% of people are still on the old copper lines, or the
No, not necessarily copper.
Okay.
Digital, most likely. Businesses especially, they have T1s still.
Okay.
Legacy T1s is the old technology.
So the 30% is hosted, or 30% is VoIP?
Both. Hosted PBX is a part of that VoIP model.
Okay.
But some people will keep a phone system on premise and just hook VoIP services up to it through the internet.
Right.
Okay, and that's in that number. But yeah, there's a big migration yet to happen.
Yeah.
And it gets easier and easier and easier for us because we're able to sell our service now into customers that already have knowledge of the industry. It's far more difficult to educate the customer and then sell them than it is to sell an educated customer.
And now you have a track record and everything else, and happy clients, and you've been around doing it over 10 years. So I bet that's getting a lot easier. But let's kind of change the table a little bit. So it sounds very rosy, but what are the threats facing you guys right now?
Well, industry dynamics, it's a regulated industry. So at first we enjoyed a tremendous competitive advantage with voice over IP because you didn't have the same taxes being applied because Congress is very slow behind industry changes. But then that came around, and eventually we have to start charging these various telecommunication taxes that are always itemized on your bill. But for us, they're still a lot lower than they are for traditional telecom services. So there's competitive threats from companies that would seek to make our product a free service on their network. Companies like Google, they do that a lot. If Google makes something free, diminishes the value for anybody that makes their living in that industry.
Yeah, they have what? Google Voice. Does that still exist?
Yeah. Google Voice still exists. They're really actually they're getting rid of it.
Oh,
They never figured out how to make money there. So it's not something that has a lot of value to them.
Here's a start. Don't make it free.
Right, exactly. But in terms of a threat for us, I think it's important that we continue to draw a distinction. There's still a phone on your desk, right? And there's still all this magic that has to happen in the background.
Sure.
Companies want IVR menus, they want voicemail, they want their voicemail transcribed to text and emailed to them, and they want text messaging enabled. And that's a big thing that we're about to roll out here in the first quarter of next year, where we're going to text enable every one of our customers' phone numbers. And I'm not talking about their mobile phones, I'm talking about their business phones. You might not know it, but young people, they desperately want to text you. They absolutely hate calling you.
It's not just that. I had a client. I was in a client's office 2 days ago, and they kept texting my main number and didn't understand why I wasn't responding.
Right. Yeah. Who are you? What century are you in?
Yeah. Well, and actually, they're about my age. I'm 52. They were probably late 40s, and I was kind of like, wow. That's pretty funny.
Right. And texting is super efficient. You don't have to have all the social norms of the greetings and, hey, how you doing? How's the family, Stephen? Yeah, great. How's the wife? Great. And everything for me to tell you something that would take me 3 seconds to tell you. So it's efficient in that respect.
That's why Stephen's always texting me.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, it's all clear
Sorry,
now.
Bob.
Yeah.
Cat's
But
out of the
imagine
bag.
if you're a car dealership and someone drops their car for service. What young people want is they just want to get a text message when their car's ready.
Yeah.
I don't want a phone call. They don't even answer their phone. If I try to call my son, I got to call him 5 times, make him think it's some kind of emergency, and then he'll finally answer. Right?
Absolutely.
I went to a restaurant the other day, and they literally I gave them my phone number, and they text me, and it let me know how long I could follow where I was. So I was able to walk around downtown McKinney and see where I was at in line.
When
then
your
it texts
table's
me when
ready.
my table is ready.
Well, and your valet does the same thing. All the valets are now mobile texting.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. Well, let's move on, Stephen.
Yeah, so we've focused a lot on business, but let's get outside the lines a little bit. So high, low. If we're looking back to the last 12 months, what's been the biggest high for you?
That one's pretty easy because 12 months is a relatively short time frame.
Sure.
And I think the highlight of that would be marrying off my son.
Congrats.
Marrying off my son.
I married him off to the young lady that we love in the family. They'd been dating since 8th grade.
Oh,
Wow.
8th grade.
Wow.
And he's 26. So we were happy to get them married. So, that's the high.
That's gotta be
anything
fun.
anything to do with your family.
My son's 26. We're not anywhere close to a marriage, I understand.
Is that right? Okay. Well, that changes quickly sometimes.
Now, they live here in Dallas?
Yeah, and they both work for Spectrum. They're both high-value employees.
Oh, wow.
And that wasn't always the case. So one of the reasons it's such a high for me is to see him come into his own, see him mature, develop. If you get 25 chances, you eventually show up.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so my wife's theory was, support, and I probably didn't agree with that all the time, but she ended up being right.
Good.
And so now Jake's a very high value employee. His wife, very high value key employee, and it's kind of up to them. I look to them to help me take Spectrum, to keep it dynamic. The older I get, the harder time I have staying in touch with new technology. I just learned what Snapchat was the other day. It's very difficult, right?
Yeah, moves fast.
And that's how you can become obsolete quickly and not know it.
What's been your biggest breakthrough while growing your business? My
biggest breakthrough, really learning and retraining myself to put trust in others. I'm a hands-on do-it-yourself guy. The kind of guy, I don't ever call a contractor. I go to Home Depot. I do everything myself. I don't ever trust anybody to do things for me.
Right.
And when your business is your baby, I think it's very difficult for a lot of small businessmen and women to break out of that, because that's the only way you can grow. You have to turn it over to others. That's been a challenge for me.
So what are you doing to take that to the next level? I mean, how are you letting go of control?
By hiring the right people. You have to have an immense amount of trust. Really, for me, having a family-based business with my son and daughter-in-law, and my wife was very involved in the business. She's one of the only people I actually trusted in the very early days to take technical support calls, right? Mm-hmm. That goes way back to day one. She was technical support. She knew nothing.
Wow.
So all she would do is answer the phone and then patch them through to me, right?
Did you don a different accent?
Yes. Hello. Yeah, good one. Right. Yeah, we had to maintain a public image. It's kind of funny to think back about that, but that is reality.
Just sell more. I mean, sale cures all ills, right? That's what we said in the hook.
I used to think sales cures all ills. In fact, it's one of my old favorite quotes till I realized it's not true. Because we have a lot of sales.
Sure.
But there's processes, and we lack those processes for a long time because, that was my shortfall. I wasn't a good manager. My skills were more innovation. I was able to innovate, make the product. I could sell it, I can install it, I can make customers happy, but only by myself.
Sure.
Learning how to do that in an organizational structure
and scale
I think is challenging for any small business.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, what's next, Dave? I mean, if we're sitting together 3 years from now and we're going to look back to today, what needs to happen professionally, personally for you to feel satisfied?
I would say that, for me to feel satisfied, I have to continue to focus on what we've just been talking about.
The other 70% that haven't adopted VoIP?
Sure. Yeah, there you go. I mean, there's a tremendous opportunity out there. And, when I look back at the mistakes I've made in the past, I started Spectrum before some of my competitors started that are 20 to 50 times larger than us right now. They went the venture capital route, hire industry executives, give millions of dollars to Google to grow and so forth. And so what we need to do is we need to stay the course and continue to be careful building our organization and growing the right way.
Well, very good. Well, Dave, thanks for being our guest today. We really appreciate it. Listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Spectrum VoIP, please go to their website, spectrumvoip.com. And we would also ask that you go to nextlevelshow.com, where you can see the video from this interview and also take a look at all the other interviews we've done in the past and see who's coming up in the future. And please go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Like us on all those
Snapchat.
Those things. I don't even know what to say about that.
You won't see us there.
We'll see you guys next week.
Have a great week.
Thank you, guys.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.